obviously this is the artist, John Stanfield. I'd just like to acknowledge that we're gathered here on Gadigal land and pay my respect to elders past, present and future. And I will just start by asking John to maybe give us a little bit of background on, maybe you could spin off the title of the show, which is Time Collecting.
I remember when I listened to Chelsea when you did your talk in National Art School, and she pulled up all these drawings when you were a kid, and I don't know if you remember doing drawings when you were a child, but that talk, Chelsea has actually got the images. I'm quite amused.
I had one.
Yeah, you had one. But I remember going back to, I grew up in Waverley, I remember going back to that house because I remember when I was like 4 or 5, we used to live under the house, like all the kids, we used to play under the house. We'd set up a house under the house. It was really dirty, but we'd cleaned it all up. And I did a whole series of drawings underneath there in chalk. And I remember as a teenager, I went back there and I thought, I wonder if they're still there. And I remember Chelsea said, did you photograph them? I said, well, there's no mobile phones when I was a teenager. But they were all still there. So, and it was just chalk, but because there was no water under there, they were still there and they were still vibrant. So ever since I was a kid, my parents would never buy me art supplies because they didn't want me to be an artist. They were always trying to push me away from doing that. But my dad would give me old ledgers and stuff like that. So those books were the sort of books I would draw in. But unfortunately, because they had no care for the arts, they threw them away. So I've got none of those books that collect my memories. But what I do remember a lot I remember every year since I was 3 years old. Like I remember the man landing on the moon, I remember the TV we had, that was 1969. And then every year I can remember, and I think that's a real important thing as an artist anyway, to collect time, because that's all you have. It's like that philosopher, Guy Debord, who said in that book, The Society of the Spectacle. Have you ever read that book?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a really intense book. And he says, time is your only commodity, and I'm really a great believer in that. In the sense that that's all we have in the end. You don't, all this is like, I asked my son's mum, what will you do with all this when I pass away? She goes, I'll throw most of it away. And then my son perks up and he goes, no, I'll keep most of it. But, it doesn't really matter what happens to it. I'm not too concerned. It's that I collected it as I experienced it. So I'm always enamored by nature as well. Like, I've been researching that. And it does come from conversations I had with Melinda about what drawing can be. No, it's quite amazing. 2017. And that nature unfolds upon itself. It's like a drawing itself. But we always think we're not part of nature, that we sit outside it, but we are actually within it. And I've made a quote this year that says, nature does and I do. So as I do, I'm within nature. And nature encompasses everything, not only what we see in the physical world outside, but also in social contact. And I like to collect that, and I like to leave a remnant behind. And it's not narrative based, it's just drawing as a language. So people ask me, but there's figures in there, and I say, I'm not so interested in them telling a story, I'm just, it's more about perception based. I meet people in the street, I talk to lots of students, I see a lot of art, I read books. We do so much, and I think as a visual person, I can take it all in, and then hopefully when I let it out in an abstract way, it comes out in an individual way, as opposed to being influenced by other artists, which we are all the time, and you defy them all the time. But realistically, I'm enamored by nature itself because it's so true unto itself, and I want to replicate that. Is that a good explanation?
Yeah, very philosophical. I like how your reflections position drawing as like a filter almost for life. And
well,
everything's mediated through it.
Marianne said something quite prophetic, even though she pushed back on it. She goes, drawing is everything. And I thought, I really like that line, because then I started thinking about painting. So I thought, well, painting, the process of painting is drawing. And then when it's finished, it's painting. So as you're making as you're pushing things around, that's very much in the essence of drawing. Or I say ceramics, when you're sitting at the wheel or you're modelling something, that's a process of drawing. But once you put it in the kiln and it fires, it becomes scrappers. Or sculpture, you know, most sculpture, that a lot of people make maquettes, that's a drawing process. Or when you're doing photography and you're drawing with the light, that's a drawing process. So in relationship to how Marianne, or say sound, say the way Gary works, you know, as he's collecting the sound, that's a drawing process. And at the end it may be a piece of music, but in order to get to that piece of music, you're doing as you're thinking. And that's something that Van Denham said, you know, drawing is an activity of doing through thinking. And I'm a believer in that. But a lot of people would argue with you, I don't know if Anthony would agree with you. You do a lot of painting, so I've been pushing that concept, you know. It's like Melinda, when I first met Melinda in 2017, we had a conversation in building 25 and she had a big tubby, no it wasn't a tub, was it? It was an ice block of yogurt, of milk and yogurt and a sandstone. And I said, what are you doing? I said, hope you can clean that up. And so, but then I did ask her, I said, can you decipher this for me? I've never seen this particular kind of drawing. And she said to me, well, the sandstone is a static drawing, and the milk and was it milk and ice? Yogurt and ice is a kinetic drawing. And I'd never thought of drawing in that way. And then I started to make work, the 3D work, where I integrated sandpaper, graphite, broken stone. She opened up a whole different concept of drawing, cutting books, redundant books, and different kinds of language of drawing which I hadn't used in my own practice, which was quite more traditional. But when I met Melinda, it was really beneficial, and I have to say working at the art school has been great for that, because the collective actually inspired me to broaden the approach of how you can make drawing. It's so broad, and I haven't got enough time to do the amount I have to do. I've talked to Melinda about it, or to Chelsea about it. We never have enough time. And I'll send Chelsea some photos of what I'm doing into doing admin work or something for NAS. But if I had the time, I would draw all the time. I have no problem with being bored. I remember when you came and talked last week, and you're constantly making, aren't you? And it's like, oh, can I have more time to do it? So it's very addictive. But the concepts that Melinda introduced me to broaden the scope, especially stone. Sand, you had that beautiful piece of sandstone, and I found I've got a pebble at work that it got broken. It's very hard to break those river pebbles, and I held it in my hand, and there's thousands of them in the world. But to get that pebble to be that size that it was, it had to go up and down the river, and up and down and up and down. It would have taken thousands of years to become the pebble. And without Melinda, I don't mean to be Linda like that, but you took me in a different direction, and I love it, because I got hold of this pebble at NAS and someone had broken it, and they're very hard to break, those big pebbles. And as soon as it broke, it slowed it down, it made it into a more static object. And then it stopped, and then someone threw it away at NAS, put it near the bin, and I picked it up, and I thought, what? And as soon as I picked it up, it becomes an active object again, another sense of drawing. And then I took it back to the store, and I painted the top of it with gesso, white gesso, and all of a sudden it was alive again, like a light bulb. So that relationship, making objects that come from nature that are inanimate, I thought that could be another way of using drawing, or understanding drawing as it's in nature. And I found that really, really interesting, and I really appreciate Melinda for that. But that's, I think one of the most important things, like for me as an artist or working at NAS, is to be able to draw, talk in a collective way, because you can't just make in isolation. You need to be able to bounce those ideas on people. Some of the best art that I saw even as a student come out of collectives, and you're attracted to those people that make in similar ways as well. But NAS has changed in the last 20 years since I've been there, and drawing especially has expanded to develop all those different ideas, and I just enjoy talking about it.
And clearly you enjoy thinking about it.
Well, I know I'm very cerebral. I probably think I'm hyperactive. I know she's a little bit hyperactive. As I said, I know Gary's a bit hyperactive. Like probably most of the people in this room, it's like there's not enough time there. The mind just keeps going bing, 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 bing. I look at Melinda, she walks and draws, and it's like, can you stop? And as
I've
I know her. She's continuously going, and when you're at Nash, that 3 years goes extremely fast. And then all of a sudden it's not there again. So people always ask me, but who continues to make the mad ones? The obsessive ones. Yeah, and I've always been obsessive. And it is a time collecting thing, because I remember at 9, I didn't want to become 10, you know, and at 11, I didn't want to become 12. And people would say, well, don't you want to grow up? And I go, no, I want to be 9. I said it to Gary. Gary makes some things that, he reminds me of a 9-year-old. It's like, they're very, you know, intellectually thought out, but when you look at them all, he gives me a memory of when I was 8, 9, 10. It could be, you know, we were talking once about how an ant moves through grass. And I know exactly what he's talking about, because I've laid down on the grass as an 8-year-old and thought like Gary. You know, where does the lizard go on a Saturday morning? And I know where it goes because I was there watching it go. And it's like, oh, Gary, that's really cool. And I could hear the sound. I know I used to listen to the sound. And I think, oh, well, that must be a kid that's going to be an artist. Someone who does things like that. Because most other kids were up on the oval kicking the football. And here was I on the grass watching this ant go around, or watching the bee jump from plant to plant. And then I remember when I was in 3rd year, I did a series of work out at Kenthurst, and I did a drawing called The Hum of the Bees, because I'd watched these bees and they were flying around the wattle, and I thought, oh, I could follow it with a line, so I'd do all the structure of the trees, and I called this drawing The Hum of the Bee, and I thought, oh, that reminds me of when I was 9 years old, and that period was so beautiful because I was in sync with nature. And it seems as you get older, we lose, or most people lose that sync with nature. But I haven't lost the sync. Wherever I go, it's always bing, bing, bing. It's always something's pinging, and you collect it. And then when you're on your own, when I'm in the studio space, I can't help myself. You know, I have to put something down, and it doesn't matter. Like the last 3 or 4 years, it's put it down on whatever material will take it. Like, I've been collecting this foam stuff. Melinda really liked it. I've been giving it to art students, so I'm upcycling and downcycling. But this is just like from an iPad and carry bag. It's such a beautiful material to draw on.
So it's beautiful.
And then from the other side
as well.
So as a drawing tech at art school, I'm always dragging things off the road, like paper, massive big bits of cardboard, and they're not for me. If I walk around the studios and I see a 3rd year or a master's student doing something, I'll just pass it on to them. Because I don't have space to make with it all. I'd love to see what Gary's got, but because he seems to have lots of stuff like that. Having that interaction, and like there's a girl at school at the moment, Melinda, she's using this, like I've given her heaps of it, and she's making amazing things with it. I'm not interacting with her when she does what she likes with it. But when I see it, I know the student that will want it. So it's like, oh, I'll give you that. You know, if I was finding something for Vilma, and I found all these old books, she'd do something with it for sure. And I love that sort of interaction with other artists, because it will give me another idea, and it keeps me going, it gives me more momentum, makes me want to make more. So.
That's very exciting. Thinking about machinery, you know, that artists have in their bodies and in their minds, of processing information and making connections with other people in that manner. And also this is a bit of a departure, but your sense of care for other people's practice. You were saying, you know, that's a reciprocal, nurturing sort of element.
Well, I started the research in Malta. Aida Temesky taught me in 3rd year, and it's in my document. She made a profound. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished art school. I was doing like big bombastic abstract paintings, you know, they were about nothing, so it's like an ego thing. We all play with it, you know, we play with that sentimentality. But she said, my parents got divorced when I was in 3rd year, and I made a whole series of drawing, you know, cathartic exercise. And she saw them and she goes, oh, why didn't you paint things like that? You know, why didn't you do a series? And I went, no, that was just a personal thing. I wanted to get rid of that angst. And she made this great comment, which it's not hers. She said, look, John, you should start with the personal and make it universal. And so I've held that all my life for the last 25 years, and I pass it on to art students. You know, start with the personal and make it universal. So I created my own residency, and because I tried to get funding, it's really hard for art students to apply for funding for residencies in Australia, because I'm going to just be broad and say it can be quite nepotistic, and you have to know people in the network. But then Noel and Michael Downs, who were teachers then, they said, why don't you try and make your own? And I thought, thought, oh, that's a great idea. So I took on that personal into the universal, and I thought, well, maybe I'll write to the Museum of Archaeology in Malta and actually have a look at my heritage and go and see where the starting point of something was. And then I wrote a letter and sent a CD off, and I got some references from Noel and Michael. And the museum wrote back to me and said, yes, we'd love to have you for 6 months in Malta. We'll give you an office and we'll let you research all the sites and you can have an exhibition at the end. So off I went in 2000 and I stayed there for 6 months and worked alongside archaeologists, and it was one of the best times of my life because they treated me like an artist, you know, and working with them was quite interesting, and that set me off looking at, because there was no, at that period, 3000 BC, there was no writing. So all you had was symbols, and I thought, so my ancestors worked within that realm of abstractions as we see in indigenous cultures. But these abstractions were European abstractions, and they were glyphs and petroglyphs, and it was their way of collecting their own memory to say, here we are. And this was a small isolated island, and for such a small isolated island to make really highly sophisticated artwork, I was blown away, and it set me off on a challenge to chase, you know, drawing a symbol and how drawing, you know, even the glyph itself, it exists. Like the oldest one, I was looking it up last year, it was from South Africa, it's 73,000 years old, the first drawing. So that was the first collecting of memory. And it existed back then, and it exists now in AI. At the most high end of technology, you have the glyph, which is a symbol that collects information and is used within that technology. So basically that's all I've done really, is then, you know, when I left Malta I went into Europe, and I've had an interest in classical painting and religious painting, but not really in what they mean. I don't know, I know Chelsea uses those motives as well, but I never reference the myth, although we've had this conversation where she slightly mentions the myth, but I don't see them as that, I see them as individual images or non-objective narratives in a sense, because they don't make sense, and I like them not making sense. So when I was in Malta, the interpretation of the Neolithic glyphs, the archaeologists were trying to tell me that they meant something. I said, you cannot make that statement. You're not talking to the artists, they're dead. So they could mean anything, these animal motifs or the spirals or the circles or triangles or staccated marks. So that part was really important to me, that I did not understand what my ancestor was doing, and neither should I have to make work that is understandable to anyone else but, you know, myself. So I collect shapes, I collect symbols, I dip into alchemy, mythology, and realistically I'm only interested in the shapes or the drawing. So as I see, I draw, and that's where it all ended up really. They're not anything that mean anything outside of drawing.
Where do you collect from?
From everything. So it's perception based. So I'm a great fan of Jackson Pollock. Not all his work, but I'm a great fan of how he did it, and Philip Guston. So I had this method of visual scanning, like collecting what they like, and then they reinterpret it. So if you look at their work, especially Jackson Pollock, I was totally, didn't know if I liked them or not, but he never used a sketchbook in his later paintings. He'd go out, he did it outside of New York, in the forest areas, and he would visual scan, so, and what is called conscious looking. So most people do not consciously look throughout their day. So they'll walk, I consciously look as soon as I get up in the morning, and I know the way I change my way of walking to the train station, but I'm always looking at everything from the cracks in the road to the pink that goes up against the line, or watching people that they dress. That's called conscious looking, and looking at everything. People say, oh, don't you overload when you do that? And I'm going, no, it's just a natural thing to look and to listen. I listen to people when they gossip on the train. You know, people say, oh, geez, you do so much. But I'm open to it. That's
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to say that once you've been doing art for X amount of time, you are basically always making art.
That's correct.
You always see something. Everything means something.
That's correct.
Yeah, everything inspires you.
Well, nature doesn't, and nature exceeds in succeeding. Like people say, oh, but nature doesn't succeed all the time. No, take a look at nature, even when there's a when there's a bushfire or something, always comes back. It's the best artist I've seen. in that respect, you know, when Jackson Pollock said, "I am nature," I totally respect that, because we seem to think we're above it, but we're not above it, we're in it. So, you know, I'm more of a sort of pantheist, you know, someone who says the God is the whole, that's the universe. I'm not a really religious person, you know, but I do give reverence to nature and to where we come from. And I find it intriguing that we collect all these symbols and stuff because of mortality, because we have, you know, cognition. But even that, knowing that I have knowledge from when I've learned at archetype, I'm constantly pushing against my own cognition. Because I don't really want to know how to make it, I just want to know that I can do it. Does that make sense? So I'll go into an art supply and buy all the colours I don't like. Because I want to see if I can do something with that, because they exist. You know, I might not be a fan of gold or silver or beige or bisque, and I went and bought them all and I want to see what happens. Or, you know, I wouldn't necessarily draw on foam, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, but God, it's an interesting surface. And why did I neglect that? You know, I may have seen that through art school. So putting limitations on what I can do. Nature never puts a limitation on anything, you know. You walk down the beach on a Sunday afternoon in Bondi and you're sitting in the sun, it's gorgeous, you know. 3 o'clock comes around and a huge southerly blows and everyone exits the beach, you know, and I'm sitting there going, oh, this is great, you know, and it's that, and then the sand whips you and it really hurts, and I stay there. And I'll take the full experience, thanks. You know, it's like sunrises. I've seen really, really good, you know, what people assume to be an aesthetic sunrise, purple with the pinks and lovely. And then I've seen ones which are, you know, it's grey, and I thought, well, nature doesn't give a fuck, you know, but it's still there, so I take it in. That's another method of collecting.
It's interesting how, like, the notion of collecting can sometimes suggest a sort of indiscriminate desire to sort of apprehend things and contain them, or, you know, you have an obsessive kind of imagination, and this idea of collecting is part of that. But there's a lot of selection and discrimination that happens in the process of drawing.
Sure.
Can you describe something about what's happening? You know, you talk about sort of cognition as a, you know, the machinery of the mind as you're being selective, and because we've had conversations around you know, talking about pictorial space and pushing things back and pulling and all of that. What do you, like, I see signature aspects of that in your work, that so there is some continuity.
Well, I'm going to use, I'll say a lecturer at the art school I went to who told me, he told me, a very difficult teacher, you need to respect family. So family, he's talking about all the artists have been before when they're still alive, and we all work in a particular way. So if I talk to Gary, he'll give me an idea, and I'll gain from that scope that he's given me. So it's a particular, or say from Melinda or from Anthony, it's a conversation that is quite, I know they have similar knowledge, but they have more knowledge than me. I don't have all the knowledge. So when art students say to me, oh, the teacher's not giving me any knowledge, I said, well, the library is your best teacher. Go to the library, they're the parameters of what has been. So, and it's a huge parameter. So I had one teacher in third year say, you don't just go to one aspect of the library, go through all the books. I said, what? That's bloody hard. You want me to go? And he goes, yes, I want you to go in. His name Kevin Moore. And he said, I want you to go through all the aisles, you know, over a year period, do it slowly, and have a look what's there. So is that answering the question?
Well, I was thinking more about the different aspects of process in which you use, you know, to sustain a drawing, because there's a lot of drawings here that are very immediate, and that I know from our conversation, I know from looking at them as well, that there's, you know, if intuition is knowledge digested, as they say, they're very much about making intuition a filter, if you like, or the thing that generates the drawing. But you're always being selective. You often erase things and block things out. I guess I'm just curious about those sorts of choices, because
my motivation is, at the end of the day, people have asked me this before, is that I'm only ever after a space I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And so, it bothers me as well, because I think, When does something start and when does something finish? I always have to pit myself up against nature, and it starts and stops when it wants to start and stop. And I could work on a drawing for weeks and keep it alive. But you know, I'll work in series, and I learned that in art school. And I'll also throw it on the floor, so I work psychologically. So I work on any different kind of paper, so to keep it raw intuitively. But the series is what keeps it together. And sometimes one within the series might get pushed to its limit. Sometimes I push it to a limit where I destroy it. I'll rip it up because I'll overkill it. It's like putting too many flowers in a vase when it only needs one flower. I never know. Say if a drawing like that, the green one, it's once. Like I have other artists say to me, "Why don't you just leave that? It's enough." Sometimes I never know what is enough because out in the world, what is enough?
Yeah, well,
like your painting, I've talked to you, I said, but Chelsea, you've got like every cherub, every apple, every nipple, it's like dripping with, it's like a big, having 10 dunas over you, and you get, oh, I like that comment. It's like you say, like having a fruit salad and you, oh, one more cherry, you know? But then you've done other work where it's quite open, and it's like, some people say, leave it, and then you'll say to me, but I don't know if it's done. I never know either. It's, you know, you get critique from other people, but at the end of the day, I think to answer your question is I work habitually and I work in series, and when they finish, they finish. And when they don't, they don't. It doesn't really matter in the end, does it? Just as long as I do it. I like the sensation of starting at 7 in the morning, and then my family will go out, they'll leave me alone, which is great, which is very rare. And that may be every second Saturday that I sneak time in. I'll look at 7 in the morning and then I'll be drawing all day or painting, and I'm sure you guys have the same experience. And then at 6 o'clock, I think, where did it go? And I hadn't finished what I wanted to finish.
It's magnificent. That's the addiction, right? That's what
It is the addiction. And I think we're lucky to have it, really. Because it makes life more fuller. You have a fuller experience. Now, I have friends that are not artists, but they always wonder why I do it. It's like, how can you spend all those hours by yourself? Where you go, you don't know what I experience.
It's a parallel universe.
It's better than sex. It's just, I'm sorry to talk like that, but I've never experienced something as exhilarating as, especially drawing, because drawing is so immediate. You know, it's like Joseph Beuys says, it's like energy, like he inspired me to make the drawing galleries. You know, these blocks of 25 years of my drawing, and when I read it, and he started talking about the energy of an object or a social sculpture, you know, he puts so much emphasis on how the artist is, and it's so important to society. And I still think we are very important. You know why? Because no one controls us. No one's ever said to me, "Don't make that." And you know, it's so rare to have that ability to be able to make whatever we like. Even in a time with, you know, the mobile phone and the masses of images that we see, I'm still able to make whatever I like, totally free of someone saying no. You know, because at the end of the day, who cares? Like nature does it. You know, the tree out in my backyard, it just keeps growing and growing and growing. I can't tell it to stop. You know, but it keeps going.
What about scale, John?
I
mean, you know, the works in here have got a feeling that they've been made in a...
Well, that comes from Ken Wilson. Like, I met Ken Wilson about 15, it would have been 15, almost 20 years ago. I met him a couple of times and talked to him, and I asked him about his studio, and he told me, oh, I just paint in the kitchen. So, like, I've done 1 metre paintings on my lap. I've spun them on my lap, and he worked in Perugia as well, so most of his work was relative to the size that he worked. Plus, in my childhood, I spent a lot of time inside. You know, I used to have caged birds. I used to sit in the bird cage with them. So, a lot of people ask me about the work as well. I have a sense of making myopic vision, like, you know, as opposed to taking it to the edge. Quite interested in isolating the image and making a smaller drawing.
Do you have ambitions to scale that? Would you
I think you are.
Do you have ambitions to scale? Would you be interested in working at a larger scale?
I have. I've got at one time I was drawing quite expressively, and I wanted to end that, get it out of my hand so I could diversify a bit more. So I made a very big 8 metre expressive drawing, and and I've still got it, but I've never shown it. It is a space limitation. I can't afford a studio. But then I remember David Susio said to me, why don't you make 8-metre paintings? You know, I've done big paintings, but I don't know what I'm going to do with that painting, or why would I need to do it?
No, it's just a question.
No, it's very interesting because I also like, you know, the early, I like Picasso and Matisse, but their size is accessible to people. Like a painting this size, and I've talked to Anthony about it, very big paintings or very big drawings, unless it's made for a museum or something, I don't understand why I would have to do it, or if it was for a performance or something, I'd play it on that scale. But I've done drawings like 10 centimetres. Yeah, like I've seen like miniature Indian paintings and paintings on leaves and stuff. I just got to the point where, oh, that's an interesting, the material comes to me, so this warranted a drawing, so I went to that. But there is a space limitation, and also I'm not a known artist, so to speak, so I don't get given opportunities to do. I'm quite envious of Kentridge when he's able to do. Like I've got drawings like Kentridge. So if you emptied out all those lawyers' books and put them up like he does, I'd have an opportunity. I could fill a whole room with them. So I'm not. I shouldn't say I'm jealous of him. It's just I'm envious that he can do that and have that play. It's just very difficult as artists. We don't get that opportunity unless you push it, and then I think, oh, it's not worth it.
You said you wanted to be an elephant when he was like,
I want to be a lizard. Yeah, I'd rather be a lizard.
You saw that on Instagram or something, yeah.
That's so good. But it's a shame because I think it'd be lovely to be given the opportunities that those artists do. Like any of us in this room, we were given a massive big studio for 6 months and given all the materials, like say, given them 20 rolls of Fabriano and say, here John, go, let me see what you can do. I could give you something really amazing if I was given that opportunity, but those opportunities don't come along. So I make it to where I live and make it what I got.
I mean, this is scaling here.
Yes, that's true. And I'm so grateful for Melinda and Chelsea for giving me the opportunity to. That's another thing. I've only ever seen one survey show of drawing in Australia, and that was, I think it's Kevin Connor. They then put work up at the art gallery. I think Wendy Sharp did something similar as well. But I don't know. Drawing seems to not get the importance that it needs. And as they give drawing that importance, they see it as an integral part of practice. But I've had lots of people come in and go, "Wow, this drawing, all drawing," and go, "Yeah, it's what I do." And even where it meets painting, I'm even thinking, like lately, all process is drawing until it's finished, and then it becomes a painting. So that thing of the making, I'm reminded to think of it as drawing. I'd like Melinda to give me a comment on that.
Whether everything's drawing.
Process.
Yeah.
You see process as drawing, whether you're painting or sculpting or taking photos.
It was interesting when you were started your talk, and you were talking about process, and I'm like,
Yeah, but why would it? I don't understand why other artists, why they diminish it. I don't understand that. They see it as a preliminary or something. You're a sketcher, doodles, you do doodles.
no, not like you, not as prolifically as you.
No, I see it as an autonomous activity as well, but I make paintings, but I'm always, it's like holding on to the baby, like we were talking about, holding on to the 9-year-old. It's like the drawings, and you'll see it in a lot of the paintings that I do, I still retain the bones of the painting, or the bones of the drawing. It's still there. I've seen Chelsea do it in her work, where she leaves remnants of the drawing, and then other ones she'll continue painting until you finish with a certain finish.
Also with you, and
Yeah.
there is a very strong element of drawing
Yeah,
in
you
your
still leave
paintings.
it.
Oh,
You
yeah,
draw
yeah,
with
I do.
Why do you leave it there?
You also did your masters in drawing, right?
Yeah.
I remember, yeah.
Why do you leave those aspects of drawing?
Because I don't want it to be finished.
There you go.
You want it to be finished.
Yeah.
So that's what that active, the kinetic is really important because it
When you
activates.
terminate it, I mean, and even
But
when
the best painter, I say Raphael.
this is like when we talk at school.
Yeah.
I'm all right now. since doing my MFA in drawing, and having been trained as a drawer, because that's what I did, blah blah blah. I struggled with this idea of trying to make paintings, drawings, paintings, saying how does one bring them together as the same thing, and they intrinsically can't be the same thing, and painting gets finished. And I think that's when it becomes not the drawing thing. And yes, you draw with paint, and I'm really conscious of that. I mean, it's a bit pedestrian, I guess, but a few years ago I was in Rome and looking at Curated and these finished paintings. But there was all this outline shit. An outline, you know, we'll talk outlines your enemy. But these beautiful paintings, they were drawings, and they kind of gel, and I've been trying to capture that freedom, and I think the drawing thing is the freedom in a thing that's a painting. Yeah, I don't know, I kind of follow this as
It says painting is being, the drawing is becoming.
Okay.
There's one for you all.
With painting, there's a consumed in an instantness about it.
It's a consolidation, it consolidates.
Whereas drawing plays out over time, even as the viewer.
And it has a special intimacy on that level. It's the window into the mind.
Yes.
More so, the painting seems so hemmed in and locked down sometimes.
I've seen big huge Rubens,
Can't access it.
like a Rubens painting nearly as big as that wall, and basically it was just a drawing, and he's just put these patches of painting. But when you see it in the book, it looks like a painting, but it's not. It's just a big drawing that's been lightly painted. Or you look at Cézanne, he just adds the colour to the drawing.
Speaking of colour, I've just been sitting here enjoying the conversation going on between your work and the graffiti outside.
That was really interesting, because when I came into the space, I didn't know what I was going to look at, and I hadn't been to King Street in 5 years or 6 years, quite a long time, and the graffiti's changed here, and it's proliferated, and I thought, you can see the time taking of the kids that have been putting the graffiti on. And then when I was in Rome, some of the churches there, I remember going, when I was in London, I should say, I was in an old cathedral, and this guy, and I said, I love graffiti, he took me to the back of the nave, and he showed me the medieval graffiti of the altar boys, and it was all this carving, all this really cool carving. So I thought, I got fed up with Rome looking at too much of the Baroque stuff, so I got on a bus and did the Rome to Canberra thing. I went an hour out of Rome to have a look at the urban graffiti, and it was unreal. It was a great confirmation of historical Roman symbolism and Western iconography and graffiti.
You're speaking of glyphs and things, there's something going on.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Well, that's temporal, very temporal language, which now Bondi, where I grew up, they have a graffiti wall down there, and it just gets covered over. But when you look at
fragmentations of the stuff remaining,
Yeah.
and stuff overlapping,
But in the Neolithic, those glyphs, they've lasted 3,000 years. So I'm always thinking the best of drawing will always go into the future. So no matter what's made, I'm not saying mine will last, I don't really care what happens to it in the future. I don't hold on to it in that way.
Well, speaking of that, if I can have a question, now you've put this life's work up, and you've had a chance to sit with it for hours and see people engage with it, you've sat back, you look at it objectively now. Have you taken anything away from doing it like this and from this process?
At the end of the day, last week I just draw about drawing. That's what I come away with. I assumed it was steeped in the glyph, but it's not. It's just drawing about drawing. And also what Anthony said before that because I paint as well, but there's always this great where a painting needs drawing. Why can't I let the drawing go? So this sort of painting here, I have a wall at home, it's called a festival wall. So I'll put work up where I can see it, where I have breakfast, and it sits there unfinished because I hit it like a drawing. It's on linen, and it's like, I'm just going to be a painting. So I didn't paint today. And I started it, and I just loved the drawing in paint so much, and then it sat there, and it sat there. And then I did this one, I drew on top of the painting, and I thought, that's a drawing painting. So I could bring them together. But that's one thing I look when I see here is, it's a fight between drawing and painting, and I hope I keep having that fight until I die, because that's what keeps keeps me going. I'm not fully a painter, I'm a maker. Is that a good answer? Well, you got me going on different.
This is great.
You got me going on different track, and all the people I talk to, Gary, Melinda, I love that. That's someone's family. That's important. That's really integral to me moving into the future. I get in trouble at school for talking about what's fine.
For us looking at your work as one like this, I'm going to.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
For me, and I think Melinda, I think I can speak for Melinda as well, when we were curating this.
You should have saw them. It was
It
like,
was
I
like
like how it came out
field
into
day.
stuff. There was a big table in the middle, and there was hundreds of drawings, and I was overwhelmed. I put basic structure in, but I let them choose what they wanted, because I'd already chosen twice.
For me, it was like there was something so deeply personal about
It was very personal, yeah.
because this was your life.
Yeah.
And actually, it's not just. I mean, that's why I wanted to spin off Belinda's question there, and your answer, which is like, this is drawing about drawing, but it's really drawing as a filter for your life.
That's correct.
And these drawings are like a witness. In
Drawing
that
for me,
sense.
in that
So
sense,
that's what I felt when we were.
It's one of your most
I was
personal.
witnessing you witnessing.
That was really scary watching you, but I let you rummage. It was like, oh God, they're at Kmart. And all my
We
drawings are
certainly
in-
rummaged.
Like this one, you should have heard Melinda.
It was like a cartoon. Like,
She was so cute. She was like opening Christmas present. Oh, look at this one, and she was so funny. But it's really weird because I agree with what you're saying. Drawing, it's more personal than painting because it's something that you do. It's a thinking thing, and you usually hide it. You usually put it in a book. You usually put it in a sketch.
But also, not many people draw in their reports.
No,
So
that
I was
the
reading
difference.
your school reports from year 3 or year 5, and there were many more than the one that's over there.
Well, this is a story. Not
John
so,
does this, yeah, John does that.
not so recently, like the library started throwing away dictionaries, and like a dictionary is an active glyph book, and we all grew up with them, but they don't use them anymore. So I started playing with those, and again, it comes from conversations with master students that the idea of expanded drawing. So my dad passed away and my mum within 2 years of each other, and all of a sudden I ended up with all these documents that they, we all have those documents, your wedding certificates and your school reports, and they sent them all back to me. They're all gone. And so I thought, oh, that's a document of 1973, and it was really weird. I held it in my hand, like it took me back to exactly 1973 or 74. And I remember, and I thought, oh, what can I do with this document, which is full of glyphs, full of my time that year. So I decided to draw on it. And once I drew the glyph on the report, it brought it back to life that time. That's such an interesting way to bring a conceptual idea into drawing as opposed to just experiencing. So the object actually still holds the memory. So I took that into a whole lot of different things like dictionaries, and Lee was great at that. She just kept on giving me these redundant books. It's like a dead book. So when I really started to groove life into when the drawing department left building 15, they emptied out the room, and then Marianne, in the middle of the room were all the dictionaries. And I said, what are you doing? Why did you take them with you? She goes, oh, I recycled them all. It's all in the cloud now. You can get it. So I took all those dictionaries. I chopped most of them in half. Like I put the knife at school. I put them under the drop saw. And it was wonderful to do that because then the book went back to tree. You turned it to the side and it looked like it was a tree again. So that took me into all different areas, like people started giving me broken rocks, like Lorraine gave me a broken piece of marble. So as soon as it was broken, no one wanted it. But it reminded me of Melinda. It's like, oh, it looks like the amount that it originated from, so it takes it back to its state. And then I put Yupo, which is the most contemporary paper that you can get. It's a fluid paper, and I stuck it to the marble, and all of a sudden it comes alive again. Yeah. So documents, I drew on my parents' divorce papers, and I drew on my dad's OA certificate. His Order of Australia. I drew on their weddings. Well, they're dead.
His Order of Australia?
Yeah, I drew on his Order of Australia.
Your dad's?
Yeah, on his certificate. Don't say that. Get that. No, but I wasn't close to my dad, and I've got the medal and everything. I'm not going to give that to Harry.
What did you get it for?
He got it for charity.
Right.
But we weren't very close. It's a quite personal situation. situation. But in terms of drawing on that, I drew on all photos of my mum. So we hide our photos in a tub, you know, or you put them in a photo album. You bring them out maybe once every 2 years or 3 years and say, oh, there's mum. But I've got them in boxes, and she used to keep it in boxes. So I just took out my favourite ones and I did glyphs on the top of them. I didn't glyph her out her face, I just put a glyph around her. And all of a sudden she came to life again, and like, that little photo became, you know, I've got it up on my wall now. But I've got thousands of, they're just like, those photos that like sit there and do nothing. Like most people, I was talking to a young couple here today, I said, do you have any physical photos? No, where are they? They're on there, on the phone. I said, maybe you should print one of your mum out, put her on the wall, you might see her every day. So, you know, I still like that physicality of the image. But what,
and material.
And the materiality of it as
like
well.
you're recycling material culture into this flow.
We waste so much. It's like at mass, I throw away so much stuff. You know.
But you keep a lot. As
And then I keep a lot and pass it on. I whinge about it, but you know, they say at least they're doing the work. You know, it's student outcomes. Have you got any questions?
I've got one.
Go on.
You talked a lot about like, the distinction between painting and drawing.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to draw a line between the two?
It's not important. I like that there's a problem.
Just enjoy it.
Yeah, I enjoy it, but there's a lot of arguments between artists about, you know, you should either draw or you should either paint. I don't believe in that. I believe that you should make it difficult for yourself and give yourself lots of trouble. And I like to have lots of trouble, and I'm sure Gary would agree with me.
Well, did you like lots of trouble?
But you like Alright, say you're trying to work something out, don't you enjoy the trouble that you put yourself into?
Yeah, that's what.
If it was too easy, it would become banal. And like, I don't know if I could just be painting all the time. I know you don't just paint all the time.
No.
It's so, I think it's more interesting to have the broader making process. I'd like to do more sculpture. I like to do whatever my hand tells me what to do. I'm not going to put a limitation on it. I like listening. I'm glad I met Gary and say Ben Denham. They broadened my scope of how sound can be part of drawing. So it falls into the scope of that everything. You why put a limitation on yourself? A lot of galleries will say, no, we don't want you to make like that. We want you to stay with the blue paintings. You know, I can't work like that. It's difficult for me to be in a gallery because they want to stop me making. They'll say, don't make that one, don't make that one, just make those. I'm going, what? You know, why would I want to be a cottage garden when I want to be a goddamn forest? You know, it's like, I want to be in the, don't you hate that though? So it's really, in Europe it's different. When I showed in Europe, they let me show whatever I want. But in Australia it's like, oh, we can't sell that. Don't do that, don't do this. I'm going, buggy, I'm just going to do what I want. So
I think all artists confront that tension between the art world and their own interior world of making.
But a lot of artists will they'll go
they're always going to be out of sync.
Yeah, but a lot of artists
some
will
people reshape themselves in order to make
And that's
make
why,
work. That's
your question about what is it between drawing and painting has brought up so much discussion, I think. And your style, John, seems to be to have quite almost an antagonistic relationship with
I'm very interested in
practice, your materials, your process. If anyone says go one way, you'd be running the other.
No, I'm very
much.
much like cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. So
Like when I was in art school,
you
they-
see that in your work.
Yeah.
It's
Like when I look at-
tussle and energy. And
When I look at Ken Whitson work, I see that. You know, when I look at Philip Guston, I see that. They both, Philip Guston and Jack, they both left art school. They had Jacobin teachers, and they just and they went and did what they wanted to. All my favourite artists that are all a little bit crazy. You know, Caravaggio, he killed people and travelled all over the place. And yet he made these beautiful paintings. And what
Well,
art?
speculation.
Yeah, but he was out there. You know, he pushed the limit.
What about Fairweather, John?
Fairweather pushed the limit.
limit.
Like Fairweather never, like Macquarie Galleries, I know a lot about Fairweather because he was a master on my shoulder. And be very careful of masters on your shoulders, as Cézanne would say. You know, beware the influential master, because he was an armour with no part. Fairweather was with me for 10 years. It's like I was related to him, and he actually got in my hand. You know, and I had to. It's very difficult to get rid of him. I had to kill him and chop off his hand and kick him out the door. I love him.
Glyph over it.
And put him over it. Don't get me wrong, I learned a lot what I learned from it is that I can actually go into Asia, because we're part of Asia, so I could go into Asia, and now I mostly use Asian brushes as he and some European brushes. And also he was with Macquarie Gallery. They used to send him canvases, and instead of painting on them, he put them in the roof to stop the rain coming in, and he chose packing cardboard instead. So he cared and he didn't care about his work. He cared about making his work. And
Can you say that John Peart was sort of the same things?
John Peart was exactly
Worked out into the weather.
like John Peart had a painting called Andy Moon, which won the Wing Prize in the early 2000s. He left that painting outside passage of his studio, and it rained, and I go, geez, it had that much oil paint on it that he could bring it back in the studio and rework it. It was like this. It was encased in what's called oil paint. John Peart in third year, he wasn't my painting teacher, but on Fridays you had an open day where there was no teachers, and I'd do all my experimentation on the Friday outside of the teachers going, what are you doing, and he would waltz in, and we'd have this great conversation about what you can do in painting, and he was the same way when we talk about painting and drawing. He would try anything, and I would say to him, well, what if I'm stuck? Like lots of people ask me what happens when you're stuck. And he gave me that great line, anything's possible on a picture plane. And I was like, kitching, God, I'm like, he's told me that. So, and it fits in with anything that I do. So if I'm doing the drawings that make painting, you know how when you put the mark down, you think, oh, I want to keep that. Or, I'll get Bill Brown, who's another teacher I had. And he'll say, get rid of the best part of the work, or the best part of the drawing. Don't hold, if it's not working as a whole, get rid of the best part of the whole in order to reactivate. And John Peart would say the same thing to me. I'd say, well, what shape do I do? And he goes, pick up my bag, and he goes, that shape. And then it's like, oh, so that's just such a random thing, that he'd just pick up my bag, and he'd say, just delineate that shape anywhere on the composition, and off you go. And I follow that process now.
I think that's what Lisa was picking up on.
Yeah, I follow that
You can just
process.
introduce a new element, and it's an antagonism.
That's right. That's a dislike. I like Amy Silman's work. She's a contemporary American painter, and I follow. She does a similar thing to me. She gives herself difficulty, and she gives herself extreme trouble. And because
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
she gives herself difficulty.
Amy Silman.
Amy Silman.
Good one for you, maybe.
And she gives herself extreme trouble, and I want the trouble, because I know how to draw. There's a picture of a dog there. I pushed myself before National Art School. So I did all the most difficult things like life drawing and observational drawing. I didn't choose any of the general drawing or experimental drawing. I was a poor objective drawer. So I had Kevin Malloy, and he made me, push me to draw the figure in its real form, And once I learned how to do that, then I let it go and went back to drawing imaginatively. But I'm always going to push back on my cognition. I want to find something that I've never seen before, and the only way you can do that is going through anything that's possible in the picture plane. And that's, I think, to John Peart. So going back to your original thing about its origin, it's a respect for family. And the family is the people that have taught me and have made me who I am. And NASA's a big part of that. So I respect that place a lot. And I've learned a lot from students I've met over the last 20 years or 25 years, and they've made me who I am. It's not all original, it's a combination of things. I'll show you something that I made in Malta with talking about collective.
And then I'm just keeping time, we're at around 50 minutes,
So I didn't put this in the show.
conscious of you holding that.
So I made this with a Maltese lace maker.
Oh,
So I did an abstract drawing.
yeah.
And she was a bit shocked because in Maltese lace making they follow set patterns, and it's been there for like 500 to 600 years. And they follow patterns, and they don't actually work intuitively, which is unusual because I get my artistic flair from my mum, who was a knitter, but she never followed a pattern. So if you're talking about where do I get my pushback, I get it from my mum. She cooked like that, she made like that, all her knitting was done intuitively. She would steal other people's, all the different methods of all the different kinds of making, and she would combine them, she'd do combines and create her own style. And maybe that sort of dissonant sort of approach to doing things comes from her. So when I gave it to this lady, she was shocked. She didn't know how to do it. She goes, I've never done something like that before. I said, look, I'll leave it up with you. I paid for it. It was like $200 at the time. And when she completed it, it looked exactly like I thought it would become. And she was shocked. And I'm hoping that by doing a work like this, it would have changed her making process. And you can actually liberate something by pushing against what you do know in order to find out what you don't know. Does that make sense? I remember learning that from art school, paint what you don't know in order to find out what you do.
I think that's what Picasso said, a good artist does not copy, but steal. You know, like you do your own thing with
well, there's a drawing there I drew on Picasso. Like, I always wanted to draw on him, like draw on top of one of his works, because he was such a thief, you know, he was a master thief. And same with Matisse, they were both master thieves. So I did a transcription of Matisse in a three-dimensional way. Very hard to do a transcription of Matisse without making it look like Matisse. Or doing a transcription of Picasso, because they were so good at being who they were, and they're so recognisable. But when people look at the little blue and white piece, they don't see it's the blue nudes of Matisse, but it's a transcription of him. So I'm causing trouble for myself by doing that to them and learning something else.
I just want to make a comment, which I think is really, I find with your work, like working in serials, which is so important.
In series.
Yeah, in series.
Yeah, that comes from
because you don't have to put everything in one. It's like a dialogue. It's a constant dialogue happening, and that I think makes.
Well, the postcards, I did them in series of 20, so I do 20 at a time. And also, as you do them in a series, you don't repeat yourself because you're looking down on the ground. I already tried that, and you're trying something else, and you're trying something else, and I'll go sideways, I'll go forwards, or I'll change the composition upside down, I'll start from the bottom to the top, and then you've got 10 going at once. Okay, I'll cover that one with red, I'll put green on that one, I'll put blue on that one, and it's like, oh my god, I've given myself a lot of trouble. Great, I've got lots of trouble.
It's going to keep you busy.
It's going to keep you busy, and it's going to keep you going, you know, and it's like, you go to art school the next day and someone will give me something, it's like, oh, what can I do with this? And that's a buzz, it's the total buzz.
Yeah, it's like Matisse with the haystack, you know, like he just carried on. And when you look at the shadows in some of them are not right. Because what he was doing something else with what was already there kind of thing, you know, like he was
also Matisse,
very conceptual.
some of Matisse's figure painting don't worry me no end, you know, I see sausages everywhere. Right?
They're itchy.
Yeah, they're itchy, there's that word I use, like I really enjoy looking at painting that gives me an itch, it's not aesthetically appealing, it's not, I want to look at, like, I remember painting Chelsea hung in the staff show, I had a frickin' this green apple in the middle of the composition. No one does that, you don't put something in the middle and you put it in the middle. And then there was this young girl with this sort of Barbie hair at the back, and I'm going, the reason that was a good image, you know why? Because I remember it. So Elizabeth Cummings said to me, I asked her, what's a good painting? And she goes, if it stays in your head for more than 2 weeks in your frontal cortex, or an artwork, or a sound piece, or a video, it's a good work. It's got to stay with you. So I'll say one of Chelsea's one, the one with the green apple, I still see it, and they're going, well, don't you like that comment?
I love that it's
works can do the
made
same
an
thing.
impression.
I beg your pardon?
Bad works can do the same.
It's like I said to Gary, like his work in the staff show, I can still see it. I can still see him. I said to him, you were like a kid, even climbing up the ladder. Climbing up the ladder is part of the process. And then he's getting everyone in suspense, and he drops the ball, and he goes tick 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 tick, and it's like, I remember that. And it was like 6 months ago. So you know, that's for me. That's what a good work of art is. It either itches you, or it's not the because when you look at something and it's you forget about it. It's just all right.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to jump in because I think that's a lovely place to end it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and this idea of staying with the trouble, and which is actually Donna Haraway line. So there's another quote for you.
Well, you do it in your work all the time.
Keith Smith said something I read recently about making trouble, not make it easy for galleries, etc. I do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Well, Tracy Ehrman says it as well.
And the memory thing. Good art.
I hope I get more trouble. I'm getting into trouble.
Oh, you will. Anyway, thank you all for